Hi, everybody. It's Jay, and I am back in the booth with you for another sneak peek video preview for this week's new release here on Say with Jay. This week's new release is There I Find Love. It's book 3 in Jessie Gussman's new Strawberry Beach Sweet Romance series, and I am really excited for you guys to hear this audiobook. Jessie's off to a great start with this new series, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. Now, I'll have more about the book and a live reading for you in just a bit, but it's time first for another segment that we like to call Cooking with Jay. For the uninitiated, Jessie has been including at least one dish within the course of her story, and we thought it would be fun for me to make it for you here today. And that's what we're going to do. This week's dish is tater tot sausage breakfast casserole. It's something you probably have had at one time or another in your life, but it's a really hearty breakfast casserole when you've got a large crowd to feed, certainly, but it's also a very scalable recipe. In fact, I'm going to give you the ingredients and quantities and so forth for the full-size dish, which feeds 8 to 10 people. But because I don't have 8 to 10 people to feed this to, I'm going to make a half batch. And it scales really well, really easily, and it's super easy to put together. So let's get started. And, as always, don't worry about trying to capture the ingredients and the amounts in real time. I'll have them and the entire recipe listed for you down below in the description. You may have to hit show more or see more, whatever your device says. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so here are our ingredients, and once again, remember the quantities I'm going to list are for the full-size batch, but what I'm going to be making here is a half batch. So, to start with, you're first going to preheat your oven to 350 degrees and lightly grease a 9x13 casserole dish, or 8x8 as I'm using here. For this, you're going to need 1.5 cups of shredded cheddar cheese, 1 30 to 32 ounce bag of frozen tater tots, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 cup mozzarella cheese, shredded, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, 2 pounds of breakfast sausage, 2 cups of milk, and 8 eggs. So for the first step, in a large skillet, you're going to want to cook your sausage until it's no longer pink. Get that nice and browned, and then drain the fat. Also, you can use whatever variety of breakfast sausage you like, hot, mild. I'm using sage. Once you have your sausage cooked and drained, in a large bowl, you're going to toss together your tater tots, your cheddar and mozzarella cheese, and your cooked and drained sausage. Then you're going to toss that all together really well. Pro tip here, make sure you do get a big enough bowl, which I nearly did not. In any case, once you have that nice and mixed, then take the mixture and pour it into your lightly greased baking dish. Then, in another bowl, you're going to want to whisk together your eggs, your salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder, and your milk. Get that whisked nicely together, and simply pour it over the tater tot mixture. Once you have this done, then bake uncovered in your 350-degree oven for 50 to 60 minutes or until the eggs are set. This is what it should look like coming out of the oven, all nice and bubbly. give it a few minutes to cool, then serve and enjoy. This is what it looks like, and let me tell you, it is delicious. Give this a shot. I know you will not regret it. And ladies and gentlemen, there you go. That's all there is to it. It is quick to assemble, super easy to make, absolutely delicious, and should you find yourself in the situation of actually having leftovers, it's just as good the next day. All right, let's talk a little bit about There I Find Love. There I Find Love is the story of Clara Landry. We met some of the Landry family, including Clara, in the previous 2 books in the series. And Clara strongly dislikes her job. She's an administrative assistant to a very successful, very driven businessman, and she works in Chicago, which is a good little drive away, but not so far that she can't go back and forth between Strawberry Sands when she likes, like on every weekend. But her boss has just informed her that she needs to transfer to the cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, for anybody who's not aware. And that is several hours away from Strawberry Sands, too far to be able to conveniently travel back and forth. And Clara is on the verge of quitting. She's on the verge of starting her dream job, and that's opening a gallery to sell her paintings. There's only one thing stopping her. She has secretly been in love with her boss for years. He doesn't know and wouldn't have a thing to do with her. Now, this is also the story of her boss, Alexander Hudson. He, as I said, is an ultra-successful businessman and the very literal definition of a self-made man, as he essentially raised himself after having 2 extremely absentee parents, let's say. But now that he has become successful, he finds that he's not any happier at the top than he was at the bottom. The one ray of sunshine in his life is his administrative assistant, Clara Landry, and he's gotten word that she's thinking of quitting. Alexander doesn't want to lose her, so he makes the very sudden decision to move to Strawberry Sands, where they can work together remotely. His life's going to be changed forever. How? To find that out, of course, you know you've got to come back this Friday. But for now, here is a non-spoiler opening scene from There I Find Love. I hope you enjoy it, and then do come back for the full release this Friday here on Say with Jay. Alexander Hudson flipped a pen through his fingers while staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows in his corner office overlooking Lake Michigan. Chicago was his hometown, although he certainly hadn't been born on this side of it. In fact, in order to get here, he'd had to do the opposite of everything every person who knew him expected him to do in life. Succeed, for one. He sighed and turned his face away from the view and walked to his desk. He picked up the water that sat there, took a swig, then walked back to the window, the pen never stopping its movement around his fingers. Normally, Saturday mornings were his favorite morning to work. There was little noise in the offices. He was seldom bothered. The phone didn't ring much, and he and his administrative assistant, Clara, had all the time and privacy in the world to lose themselves in their work. Except today, Clara wasn't here. Twisting on his foot, he strode back to the desk, then turned and started back to the window without taking a drink. She had wanted to go home. Like Chicago wasn't her home. She belonged here, belonged in the office with him, helping him, taking notes and instructions, looking up information, making coffee, grabbing lunch, sending emails, and giving a little sunshine to his soul. He pursed his lips. Turning abruptly, he strode to the other wall, past the large windows and the beautiful view, barely seeing it. He made a lap around his office, large and luxurious, the kind of office he could only dream about as he ascended the ladder, coming from the slums of the city one small step at a time. Through hard work, determination, and perseverance, he'd earned this corner office, and he'd worked hard to keep it. But somehow, the success that he'd always thought would feel so good didn't really feel like success. He didn't have the satisfaction, didn't feel happy, except when he was around Clara. She had a smile and a way about her that was friendly and cheerful, even on his grumpiest days. It was far, far different than anything he'd experienced growing up. He really didn't know anyone else like her. She trusted way too easily, which he scoffed at, warned her about, and finally had tried to protect her from herself. She was so different from everyone else he knew. Most people were sarcastic and self-focused. People who would say if someone was too cheerful or too happy or too eager to please, they had self-esteem issues that needed to be worked on. He'd spent enough time in therapy to know that. But sometimes, he wondered exactly what his therapist knew. After all, from the little bit that he talked to her about personal issues, she didn't seem to have a very happy life herself. That had made him dig deeper, and eventually he quit going. She'd been divorced twice, had been currently fighting over custody of her 2 children, not fighting for custody, fighting to not have it, and had been suicidal. He considered himself a little bit crazy to be thinking that he could go to someone like that and get life advice for himself. He wanted life advice from someone like Clara, someone who seemed happy and cheerful, someone other people enjoyed being around and who seemed content and at peace with her life. His entire life, he was looking for that contentment and peace. He hadn't found it yet. That wasn't his problem this morning, though. His problem was he suspected that Clara wanted to quit. It was something he'd heard as he was passing the water cooler the previous week. Normally, he didn't walk around without reading something. After all, there was no point in wasting time. So normally he had his head down and didn't pay attention to the people around him. But when he heard Clara's name, his attention had been diverted. It was just a snippet of information, but the line that he'd heard, "Clara is out of here soon," had made his heart drop like a rock and his hands tremble. There wasn't anyone else who worked in the office named Clara. Not that he knew of, anyway. But just in case, he checked. Clara Landry, his administrative assistant, was the only Clara in the company. Apparently, she was quitting. Just a few weeks ago, he had asked her to move to the cities with him. He was starting a new office there, and it would take 6 months to a year to get things up and running. He didn't want to do it without her. Actually, he really didn't want to do much of anything without her. Funny how she'd come to be indispensable to him. He hated that. That was why he didn't get close to people, because they never stayed. He'd been abandoned by way too many people who were never supposed to leave him, way too many times in his life, and he should know better than to get complacent now. The trouble was, he didn't know what to do. He could just let her go, but there was something in him that didn't want to do that. He knew he couldn't hold her. No one could hold another person or change them, as much as they might like to. He'd learned that with his parents. But Clara, she was different. He pressed his lips together as he stared out, unseeing, at the blue-on-blue beauty of Lake Michigan and the wide expanse of sky. There had to be a way. Hi, this is Jay, and thanks for listening. If you're ready for another great audiobook, here's one we think you might like. Or check out the playlist with all our latest releases. Don't forget to subscribe to Say with Jay, give this video a thumbs up, and tell us what you liked in the comments.